Welcome back, everybody. It's Dem Boys Watch Footy. Thank you all again for giving us a listen or a watch, depending on if you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I want to give you guys all a big shout out because you are definitely helping us grow. We've been having some good things happen over here. Watch numbers are going up, and it wouldn't be without you. So, got to give you a lot of love with that. We are here today with PJ, TC, and your boy E. Gentlemen, how's the holiday weekend?
Well, for some of us, it was a beautiful Thursday and a shitty Sunday.
Yeah, to dig a little bit deeper into that, Manchester United, TC is a huge fan of, and we're going to jump into why that Thursday was so great and why that Sunday was pretty awful. But we all know a lot of things could change on that. For me, New York, it was nice and sunny. My team just defeated Real Madrid last week and very handsomely. So I was very happy about that. Got to see a Brooklyn FC match, my first one of the season. Really great to see Brooklyn FC's women team tie it up, and it was a pretty good one-all match to watch. And then sadly, the Pope he passed away this past weekend. So a lot of different feels, you know. PJ, how was yours?
I'm chilling, man. I'm here in Boston. I found my old Red Bull scarf. It's not the team that I worked for, but I saw your man on replay. So I'll never be an Arsenal fan, but I'm an Henry fan. So I got the Red Bull Red.
Hey, that's all we can start off with. I mean,
Speaking of Henri, he was glowing last week like a pregnant woman in the third trimester. He was
look,
and
That's a
all
good one.
kinds of previews, if I could say this. There were so many snippets of TT scoring the winning goal. And anything, if anyone who watches him based in America, you know that TT and his crew, he was at the stadium and I saw him glowing. I saw this man glowing, you know. He sometimes has such a cool French poker face, but this week, that man was losing his cool. He was losing his cool. He was like a schoolgirl, you know, checking out like me for the first time. You know what I mean?
hey, it's the first time the team has been into the Champions League semifinals since 2008, 2009. So anything to get this.
In that semifinal. Do you know? Who did they lose to? Quick trivia.
Ooh, that's a good
What was the
question.
question?
That was Manchester United.
Correct. And
Yeah.
do you know who scored a 55-yard free kick in that game?
Yeah, that was Cristiano off of a very terrible Kieran Gibbs foul. I remember that match like it was nothing. That was at the Emirates. Wayne Rooney was kind of ruckshot over Cinderos. And yeah, it was not a good time.
Ross.
That was a rough, some dark days back in the history.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember that. It was a
Hey.
bright day for me. Dark for you.
Yeah, but we persevere on. We persevere on. So let us get started with our Europa League, seeing as though we got our Manchester United boy over here. Manchester United has been able to qualify for the Europa League semifinal. They defeated Lyon 5-4 in a very insane match. You had it go to tie all the way at the end of 90. And then Lyon also went down a man. They went down to 10. And then suddenly you get this crazy burst. You get a penalty after you get like a beautiful goal scored from Lyon. And then you get our old boy, Alexander Lacazette, just kind of do what he needed to do at the penalty spot, puts them up 4-2. Manchester United then quickly and crazily respond. I don't understand how that penalty was given, but I'm going to let TC just drive it home from here. TC, take it away.
Look, I think this is one of those games where this is football. It was utter madness. Utter madness. Manchester United were up cruising 2-0, playing some great flowing football. You know, you have this latency that creeps into this Manchester United team so often. That 2-0 is just not good enough, and we know it. And I think the amount of lunacy we saw throughout that game, the highs and lows, is exactly why we love football. I'll say that. It's exactly why we love football. What you saw there, however, was one team devoid of real structure and direction when the times got tough, and as they have for the whole season for that team. That team I'm talking about is Manchester United. However, what you also saw was some of the craziest 8 minutes of football just through sheer determination and passion from both sides. To give you an example, I agree there were some very dubious calls in that game. Eric touched on them. One of them was a red card. It was a second yellow card for Tolisso. It was never. He should never have been a yellow card in my, and that's a problem with football. I'm a United fan. I hated seeing that. But what it did do to that team is galvanize them, because often when you go a man down, you no longer think that it's just I have to rely on Eric, I have to rely on PJ, because PJ might not be there, and it's the two of us, or Eric's not there. And what that means is that the team together, everyone steps up. They start playing 110%, and that's what you saw. You saw 2 quick fire goals. You mentioned this guy Lacazette. He thought he had won it. He was running around. He thought he'd won it because he rightly so had. There were two goals down. I cannot stress this enough. I was watching this game, unfortunately, in a state, and I was about to walk out because I couldn't take any more heartache at the time that I was watching this game. I really couldn't
I
take
gave you a
it.
call about that one. I was like, do not
Yeah.
watch this match.
No, and somehow I did. And those 2 goals at Old Trafford, I took off my shirt in public. It was great. And I'll end on this. I think we then saw, and we will get into the Premier League a bit later, but I think what you've seen is the inconsistencies of Man United and the potentials of Man United, which is what you just don't know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah, that Harry Maguire header goal was about in the dying embers of extra time as well, because I honestly thought it was going to penalties. I thought you guys made your comeback. Kobe Minu with an amazing cutback after Bruno Fernandes. He was able to score his penalty kick goal, but somehow, someway, Casemiro, old reliable, just crossed it in. He just came out of nowhere and just like put him away. Leon, it's really tough for them, especially because of all of their issues, which we're going to bring up a little bit later for our main topic. But yeah, it is something else to behold a team coming back 3-2 within extra time after the match was tied 2-2, and they were up a man. We'll see how that moves forward. They will be playing against Athletic Club Bilbao, correct? Yeah,
that is true. A very strong Basque team from Spain that only chooses players from that region. Yeah. But we have heard that Nico Williams has taken a bit of a groin injury in his match on Sunday, which unfortunately for the young lad, great for my right backs, because that kid is, as we know, devastating for Spain. So
devastating
I will happily take that. Devastating for Spain. Let's see how long he's out for. I doubt he'll be out for too long. I think the next round, Eric, tell me when the next round is, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's in...
You get a week.
Exactly.
Next Thursday is the next.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
Thursday
I think he might be back by then. But like, if he doesn't have him, it's a big loss to Bilbao. And then the other game was obviously the Tottenham game that was happening at the same time. Tottenham, a team that we know has struggled this season, struggled across like all its formats. But one place that these teams, that Man United, by the way, the only undefeated team in Europe. I have to say that before I close it. No, it's a fact. It is a fact. There is no other team in Europe in the Champions League or Europa League that is undefeated. We are the Invincibles currently.
Sorry.
Hey, I gotta give you props there. I mean, you gotta right now. What is Manchester United's league place in the table currently?
I think it's around 14.
Yeah,
14.
Yeah, 14. It's been a really tough season. They did lose to Wolves 1-0. And there's a good chance that you could drop all the way to about 16th or 17th this season. You don't know.
It's okay, we'll be in Champions League next season, so we don't care.
That is one of the crazier parts. I also want to bring up Tottenham's match against Eintracht Frankfurt. They were able to win that tie on aggregate 2-1. They had a penalty goal made within the first 20 minutes of the match, and right after that, they just did something that never happens under Ange Postecoglou, which is actually play defense. Went to a back 5, and they kind of clamped down that match, and they saw it out. Usually what we know about this squad in the 2 years that Ange, their manager, has actually had that team, he loves to play open football. It's who we are, mate. That's what he loves to say. He loves that open space, but he's just like, ever since he's put pressure on himself with that quote earlier this season that he always wins a trophy in his second year wherever he manages, he's got to put his money where his mouth is. Also, to TC's point, Tottenham has defeated Manchester United 3 times this year. So if they do meet in the final, because Tottenham has a good chance, they're playing against Bodo Glimt, the Norwegian
I thought that was
champion.
2 teams for a second when I was looking. I was like, what's going on here? Because there's like a slash in the middle. I was like, is this still undecided? Like, who are these? They're the first Norwegian team to make it this far in the Europa League, so that's good for them, right?
Yeah, any of the European challenges, they made it, and it's very interesting how they made it because they lost 3-1 to Lazio, but it tied the game up onto aggregate. Podoglen also had a red card within that match, but it came down to penalties, and both teams were just giving the game away.
Oh, man.
Lazio had 3 missed penalties. Bodo Glimt, including their captain, had 2 missed penalties, but it ultimately ended up being a 3-2 win for Bodo Glimt. So we'll see how that goes. Tottenham is going to be playing them on that Thursday, May the 1st as well. And it'll be at the same time as Manchester United, and then we'll see what happens after those 2 legs.
It's football. Isn't it fantastic about football? This small team from Norway is piling its way up there. I think this is what we love about the game. This is what we want to see. We don't always want to see. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is sometimes you can see a bit of bias in terms of where we're leaning already, right? Because they're a smaller team, but they're here for a reason. So they've definitely got the potential to win and make an upset, and that's what we want to see. The same with Manchester United. I think they might be the underdog, to be fair, going into and I think what you're seeing is just like a nice matchup of different different playing styles and an interesting next round to see what happens. I very much am very excited. I unfortunately will be in the desert during that round and will only come out afterwards, so I won't even be able to find out what has happened. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm literally going to be like, as soon as I come out of the desert, be like, let's see how this is going because it's going to be so interesting and to see the Champions League.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in all of these European ties upcoming. It's a lot of very interesting spaces that we can see because within the Europa League specifically, we have 2 English teams, a Spanish team, and a Norwegian team. While in the Champions League, we have an English team, Spanish team, an Italian team, and then as well as French team. So I'm glad that there's diversity within these spaces. It's still a little weird that Manchester United and Tottenham, we tape our shows on Mondays, and Tottenham just lost their 18th match within the Premier League. Very insane to say, especially with the team with that caliber. They made it to Europe last season for a reason. So the fact that they're doing this bad, but they still have a chance to actually make it into a Champions League spot due to the competition that they're in. It's very weird to see, but hey, it still gives these clubs and these fan bases some hope,
They need Pochettino back.
I definitely think so. I mean, I remember us talking about it before.
I mean, a lot of the U.S. fans, I guess some criticism from him was that he, never won anything, but Tottenham was always very competitive with him. They just never, had the best record.
Final, yeah.
They were always in the top 6, which is pretty good considering they're a big club, but they're not the biggest club.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, I do like I wouldn't say the new format, but it was the last 5 years or so that the Europa League winner is going to the Champions League, and now it's not just a secondary tournament, it's like a real tournament. So It's exciting. TC, if Man U wins the Europa League, does it make up for their domestic season?
PJ, that is a delightful question. Such a delightful question. Short answer is no. But if we win the Europa League and we win a trophy and Arsenal don't win Champions League and come second, Arsenal.
It's just about being Arsenal.
What do we have to do with anything that Manchester United has to do with?
No, I think PJ started something that was really clever, and I like that question. I think I want to pose based on what he just said. If we win a trophy and you come second and don't win the final, whatever it is, right? Who's had a more successful season, would you say? Even though you've got to the final but didn't win it,
Let's just judge on what has happened so far. Manchester United's Premier League is awful right now. Let's just say what we do have power over right now.
Just in the pot because I have no skin in the game.
I see. Give us an answer. I was truthful. Give us an answer. Yes or no? Would it be a successful season if you...
Manchester United will have a successful season if they win the Europa League for sure. That's that. There's no other question about anybody else's team.
No, okay.
About the success of it.
Okay, viewers, I want to see some comments in the comments. The question I'm asking that PJ asked was, would United still have a successful season if they won the Champions League? And then the question I asked.
No, the Europa League. The Europa League.
Yes, what I said. And then the Europa League, and then the other question was, would Arsenal still be determined to have a successful season? That is a season that Manchester United, if they did not win the Champions League but still came second. But Manchester
Right now,
United won.
We're playing with house money.
They're doing what
Nobody
they're
expects us to do.
expected,
Yeah, we're doing what we need to do.
Arsenal's at the level that they should be right now, right? I think that's
semifinal of a European tournament. We are second in our domestic league with all of the injuries that we had. We need to figure out how to do better in these domestic cups. Completely do not understand where we falter there. That's got to be something that's really honed in on within the next season under Mikel Arteta's reign. But I'm happy with what the squad's doing. Manchester United, I'm glad that they will finally move out of that leaky stadium called the Theatre of Dreams. That is, it's reminded me of the theater in. It reminds me of the theater in Midtown where all of the rats were running out of before they demolished it.
I'm going to say this one time. We will not disrespect the Theater of Dreams, okay?
We don't have to disrespect it here. It's been shown. People are getting rained on in the stadium because it's leaky.
There's fault.
No, it's leaking in the stadium.
No, it's not. It's not leaking in the stadium.
Okay, let us see the facts, and then let us actually see the gossip around it.
Look, what did you think about the new stadium design? We spoke about that last week. Is that we spoke about that last week, didn't we?
We talked about it a few weeks back, but I mean, it's a big old Trident Bowl, and it does what it needs to do, you know?
It's so diplomatic. I'd like to say that any stadium we build will have a bigger capacity than the Emirates. The Emirates has really never been a fortress, and unfortunately, there is no stadiums that really echo anything anymore other than Old Trafford, the Britannica, Anfield.
The Bernabeu.
I'm sticking to England. Oh, well, those ones are I mean, the Bernabeu is one of the greatest. I'm sticking to England. I'm trying to think of traditional stadiums around. Emirates, I've heard is great. I've heard
Stamford Bridge, I hear, is great.
But I've heard Britannica, Fulham. Those are great, iconic stadiums that are.
Craven Cottage.
Cool. I've been there.
You like Craven Cottage?
It's great.
It's cool. Yeah, it's not huge, but I saw it in Crystal Palace like 10 years ago, and it's nice. It's that's when they were in league. They were in the second league, though. Yeah, they have I think a bar named after like Brian McBride there or something. I didn't get to that, but London's just so crazy because there's so many like stadiums there. I feel like there's so much competition.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to go past West Ham Stadium all the way out in East London. I got to also go to the Emirates. I got to be outside of the Stamford Bridge for Chelsea, got to go see Fulham Stadium outside, and also got to see Brentford Stadium because I was staying over at Acton Town. So yeah, it's seeing all of those stadiums, but then also seeing how close everything is on that island is. I'm glad that everybody has a chance to be able to enjoy the sport that they like.
But do they? I think you're saying that, but there's another portion of that where the people who are there, for instance, with Manchester United, the problem is our stadium is now looking to sell those seats that locals have been getting at higher prices to tourists who are willing to come in and pay for that.
That's what happens when you have
the locals, the people.
Manchester is not a tourist destination like London is too. That's a factor.
Yeah, Manchester's growing. It's growing to be.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's now number 2, only to, like, Liverpool used to be number 2, but now it's kind of taken over. Manchester based off nightlife, a lot of new industry going into the spaces. But yeah, you can't beat London. So we'll see what happens in the future. But to TC's point, trying to kick out some of the actual people, the supporters of the club, it's tough. But when you have new administration and one of your owners of your club says that the club was almost completely out of money, you have to do some drastic things to get people out. So we'll see what happens with them.
I will just always think Manchester United has the craziest fans because I remember watching Eurotrip like 19 years ago, like right before I got really into soccer. And like the guy's like, "Welcome, mate," and like opens the thing with his eyes. I'm like, these guys are crazy. I have to say.
Yeah.
Apparently, they're not as crazy anymore, but it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, hooliganism has really been pushed out of English football, but there are still different ways to experience it all across Europe or all across the globe. That's why one of the reasons as to why the sport unifies, you know. But on to our next topic, we have our top 5 league survey of how things are going into the very end of the season. Right now within England, you have Liverpool firmly number 1 over Arsenal. Liverpool has a chance to win the title with 4 matches to go if they win this weekend. So we'll see what happens with that team. But Arsenal it's like a 0.00002% chance that we actually are able to win the Premier League. But you do have some very strong things going for the top 5. This year, Champions League qualification is top 5 spaces due to their win today. Nottingham Forest now firmly in number 3. Newcastle.
Right up there, though.
Yeah, it's really tight up.
3 through 7 are all in a couple points, so anything can happen outside of Liverpool winning the league.
Yeah. A lot can change. Right now, Arsenal's pretty firmly entrenched into number 2, barring a few different things that happened this year. Manchester City is in the 5th position below Newcastle. Newcastle just lost to Aston Villa, so we'll see how that goes. Aston Villa has won their last 5 within the Premier League, and they no longer have Champions League. Say that again?
They didn't just lose.
They were battered, for sure. Yeah.
Smash.
But they were smashed. But Newcastle had been winning their they were coming in winners of 4, and then they just ran into the bus. All
That's what made it so weird. That's what made it really, really weird, because they were so good for been very consistent, very good outfit, strongly well organized, great defense, great midfield. Tonali playing like the freaking gambling champion he is. The Italian stallion, the man who comes here, smokes cigarettes, and bets on things. He is cruising, and that's what made it so weird. And it was a little thing like that. Aston Villa, sneaky little team, very, very good, as we know from what we've seen. But just as well, so I was very surprised by that. Completely, again, football.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of good things to see. Like Man City won 2-0, and I feel as though that they could have lost that match to Everton by the same scoreline. A lot of smaller things can happen and change throughout the course of the match, and see what happens. Chelsea finally picked up where they needed to. They were able to eke out a win against Fulham 2-1. Now firmly in 6, tied with Villa on points at 57, City with 58, Newcastle with 59, and Nottingham Forest with 60. Last week we had said our predictions for the Premier League, so not going to bore our listeners with that. Let us move on to the Bundesliga. This will be the first time within our new season talking about the German Bundesliga, the main league there. So right now, Bayern Munich has a commanding lead over Bayer Leverkusen, last year's champion, 72 points over 64. This will be a good chance for Harry Kane to get his first ever trophy as a player. It'll be a very interesting watch to see that curse be broken over at Bayern Munich with him. Vincent Kompany would be able to also get his first trophy as a manager outside of winning promotion for Burnley when he was there. So Eintracht Frankfurt are in 3rd, RB Leipzig are in 4th, and you have a few other teams that haven't really been within the fray much. SC Freiburg in 5th, and Mainz in 6th. Dortmund is not having a very good year. They are in 7th. They still have an opportunity to climb, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Anything really glaring at you from the Bundesliga right now?
I mean, just probably Dortmund struggling. I mean, they're traditionally always a top 3 team, and they're not having the best years. So I think that's probably the biggest story domestically in Germany anyway.
Well, that, and there's a number of things I think looking at. One, Bayer Leverkusen and Xabi Alonso being touted as the next coach of Real Madrid, and potentially with Carlo Ancelotti potentially going to
Brazil.
Yeah, exactly, Brazil. Then with Bayern Munich, as you mentioned, with Harry Kane, but I think looking at their squad as well, they're also looking to, this squad is an aging squad, if I'm not honest. So they'll be looking to really revamp. Thomas Müller being told that, he had a contract, does no longer have a contract. One of the only last few players, so he's going to be going at the end of the season.
Müller is still playing.
And I think that is a big story in itself, because it really boils down to where are all the one-player club teams going, And is it just because it's that hard to be consistent for that long in that place? Like, it's just they don't make them like that anymore, or we just don't have that consistency. Because that to me is like wild.
Modern football is more about mobility. You see it across all sport leagues. You are empowering players to have a little bit more say in their freedom. You're also empowering clubs to have more say in the fees that they can demand of these players. I completely agree with you. It's interesting to see that these one player club regions aren't really working out. I think one of the last ones actually moved was for Harry Kane with Tottenham. He was with them for at least 7, 8 years before he moved on. And that was mainly because he didn't want to be a part of another project to regroup that entire squad and rejuvenate that squad. So he wanted a chance to actually win. So that's something that you're going to see, especially when we get into our main topic. A lot of these other players within France, some clubs within Spain, if these deals aren't reworked, especially with modern football and the need to starting to monetize off of everything that you have the big clubs that are able to do it, but some of these smaller clubs are having a really hard time staying out of administration. For our listeners, administration is the act where a club cannot be able to accurately show a profit on their books after about 3 to 5 years. I think that is where some of these clubs are. And if their debts are taking over, suddenly that club has to go down and be able to reorganize and refigure it out before they. And it has to be both a sporting as well as a financial issue. So it is very interesting to see how these things are going to play out in the future for a lot of these clubs. And then let us head over to Spain, where this is a really fun battle going on right now. In La Liga, you have Barcelona.
Hello.
Barcelona. You have them number one right now with 73 points. Real Madrid with a very crazy last minute winner to stay alive within this title race with 69 points. Atletico Madrid at number 3 with 63. Athletic Club, who will be playing against Manchester United, they're fourth with 57. Villarreal in fifth with 52. Real Betis with the born again Anthony from Manchester United, and then Mallorca coming up in seventh with 44 points. So it's a very tight race. We have another Copa del Rey Clásico coming up between Barcelona and Real Madrid. But it's very interesting to see how this is playing out. PJ, do you have any thoughts on that you want to talk about with the La Liga?
Well, La Liga seems to be the only one of the big five leagues where like we're kind of seeing their traditional powerhouses actually in place. You have Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Atletico in the top three, and those have been the historic top three. In no other of the top five leagues are you seeing that right now. So I don't know if that's good or bad. Probably leaning towards bad because we like to see those kind of more underdog stories, but it's the only. I mean, right now, third place in the EPL is freaking Nottingham Forest. You've got Juventus and AC Milan not in the top three in Italy. You've got Dortmund in seventh in the Bundesliga. So things are relatively in order at least at the top of La Liga. So that's. I guess kind of interesting and possibly a little bit boring at the same time.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, right now, if Real Madrid did not win this match, Barcelona would be far and away just like done. But right now, seeing as though Barcelona has 23 wins, Real Madrid is 21, 69 to 73. Anything can happen with these last matches of the season. I'm excited to see how this kind of ends, especially if Carlo Ancelotti is to be ousted as the coach of that squad. After that comprehensive win that Arsenal did over Madrid over 2 legs, everybody is kind of talking about a full-on rebuild. They're looking at both their defense, their midfield, and attack. It was just because of how disjointed that entire match, those 2 legs looked like. A squad should, and we talked about this in our analysis before of Real Madrid, their team just looked imbalanced, especially when they brought Mbappe in. He still loves to play out on the left, drift wide to cut in. Vinny Jr. does that as well on the left, and Rodrigo on the right was completely blanketed by up and coming emerging left back within Miles Lewis-Skelly. But even in the midfield, Luka Modric, he's the elder statesman of the squad, and he can't be counted on to be the full engine within the room. Valverde, who I've touted as the best center midfielder, even though now Declan Rice is really stepping his name within that role right now as a box-to-box midfielder as the best within the world. He was still doing some amazing things. He was the one who was able to score that very drastic late winning goal for Real Madrid over the weekend. But outside of that, their team just seems to be very imbalanced in both attack and defense. So we'll see. Perez, he likes to put a lot of money and figure it out from there. They're going to have some new signings, of course, and they're going to offload some players. So we'll see what happens. Atletico, they're starting to become Argentina in Spain. All of the Argentinians that are playing for the Argentinian national team are starting to go there. So we'll see if more players go over there and if they'll be able to start ousting Barcelona and Real Madrid as well. And Athletic Club Bilbao, what we're seeing from them as they only sign players from their region, we'll see if they'll be able to keep this going, especially with the fact that
It's impressive, honestly.
it's quite impressive, but sometimes you do have to spend money to continue to keep moving forward. But if that is their strategy that always works for them, who are we to judge on that? So, TC, do you have any final thoughts on that?
Yes. Real Madrid's squad is the envy of envies. So I get it. I think they're just unbalanced. I don't think they're imbalanced. I think they were unbalanced, slightly based on injuries as well. I think their squad is very, very, very stacked, my friend, of young players. They've got very young players. They shifted. So I feel nothing for them. I think they're just going through something. I think you might have mentioned Mbappe is a top-class forward. So top-class forwards can play across the line. So I don't use any of that shit as an excuse. No offense to them. But they're fucking all 100 million players. So if you're telling me as someone who plays on Sunday and sometimes has to play left back, right back, centre back, fucking striking, all those things, I can do that. You telling me those guys can't do that shit? That's nonsense. I don't buy that shit. Number two, do you think Barcelona's best player is going to win, is the leading contender for Ballon d'Or? And that would be
Rafinha. I've clearly said that Lamine Yamal is their best player, but Rafinha has been doing the most on both the leadership level as well as in the clutch time for them. He's the one that stepped up, but Yamal has been the big driver of creativity for their squad, as well as he's just been it all for them. He's young. We'll see what happens because Lewandowski actually just got hurt over the weekend as well. So
yeah.
We'll see how this season finishes for them. They're still fighting for the treble within the Champions League, this La Liga, as well as Copa del Rey. So we'll see what happens, but I always will give Barcelona a fighting chance just because I've been scarred too long of how Barcelona always figures out a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite league race so far is Serie A over in Italy. Right now, you have Inter and Napoli tied at the top with 71. You have Atalanta in third, Bologna. I'm very surprised that squad is still fighting, especially after how many departures that they had. They're in fourth right now. Juventus is in fifth place, and Roma is in sixth. It's very interesting to see AC Milan is down in ninth place. Fiorentina is in eighth. Lazio is in seventh. But the reason why this has been my favorite race so far is because Inter and Napoli at the top, because both of their matches have ended on 1-1, their two matches against each other. If they stay on the same number of points to end the season, they'll have to have a match against each other to settle who is the champion of Serie A this year. I think more leagues need to adopt this. I don't want to see any of these goal differential things or goal forward or goals against. I don't want any of that. If you have the same number of points, you got to play it out for
Let's
that
go.
championship.
More money for it.
Exactly. I'm loving it.
I wonder, what's interesting is that some of the driving players of that Napoli team are the heartbeat and soul of Manchester born beds, Players like Scott McTominay, people of Florence like David De Gea. It's just sad. Sad to see great players not at their real clubs.
Not that they're not at the real clubs. It was
interesting
a change in the project for what some of these people are doing, PJ, I know you are a huge admirer of Fiorentina, like TC said. David De Gea is over there at Fiorentina. He's actually willing them up into the Conference League right now. They have a really good chance to get into the final against possibly Chelsea or possibly another squad. They'll be playing against Real Betis and Antony. But yeah, what do you think about Serie A so far?
Man, I would like to see Fiorentina good again. I lived there for a year and got to see a handful of games. A great atmosphere over there. Love the Fiorentina purple, but they were a perennial Champions League team. It didn't matter how much cocaine Mutu was doing; they were doing it, and they just haven't been really in that, even like at a Europa League level for a lot of years. They're having an okay year so far, but as a US fan, like I also like to see AC Milan and Juventus do well. Juventus they could be doing better. AC Milan is having a terrible year. They're in ninth right now with the amount of money they spend. That is not acceptable. My man, Captain America, Christian Pulisic, is the only person on that team who seems to know how to do anything. So I wonder what's going to happen with them if their coach will get fired. But they definitely need to be doing better. But the race at the top is a good one. That'd be cool if there was a playoff, because
Yeah,
the other leagues like the French league, the Bundesliga, those are like pretty much
completely
done. The
wrapped.
Premier League is pretty much done, so that's a good race.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree with you there. And then leading into our final, which is also going into our main topic, we're going to be discussing about Ligue 1 over in the French league, McDonald's Ligue 1. So right now, that league has been wrapped up probably for about 2 months now. PSG has won that league quite handily on 77 points. Marseille is coming in second with 55, with Monaco third right now, but they're in a little bit of a battle with Lille, Nice, Lyon to make sure that they stay within that Champions League to Europa League spot. So one of the reasons why we want to talk about Ligue 1 today is because it talks a little bit about one of the things that this podcast really wanted to eliminate was also the media money, how much money goes into these soccer teams, these soccer leagues all across the world. Because if you're able to follow the money, you're able to see some crazy, extraordinary things within football, sport as well. You have all of these teams that are Forbes top 10. Right now, you have Real Madrid still fighting alongside the Dallas Cowboys as one of the most profitable teams in the entire globe.
Don't sleep on the MLS teams either.
Oh yeah, the English Premier League teams. Manchester
We
United
talked
is
about
up.
that. It's
Yeah,
shocking how valuable MLS teams are.
they're getting up there.
Absolutely shocking. Their value. I'm not saying their level. Like an average MLS team would get completely. They would be by far the worst team in the Premier League. But in terms of value, they are some of the wealthiest teams in the world.
Yeah, the collective bargaining agreements that they have in place in the MLS, which is mirrored off of what the NFL does with all of their teams to make sure that all of their commercially shared revenue is staying within those teams. That's the big reason as to why promotion or relegation does not seem like a smart outfit for the MLS. But just going to talk about what's going on over with Ligue 1 right now, we have a big battle that's brewing in between Ligue 1 and their media partner DAZN, or DAZN, or however you want to say. I'll just say DAZN, just to keep it simple. So right now there's a TV rights mediation that's going to be taking place later this week in between Ligue 1 and DAZN. So let me just give you a nice little picture. So last year, the French Football League awarded domestic broadcasting rights for Ligue 1 to DAZN and BN Sports for the 2024 to 2029 seasons. Those 5 years, they secured $400 million annually per match day, and BN would take one marquee match per week for $100 million annually. The total package amounted to about $500 million per season. The main issue was that Ligue 1 agreed to it, and they said it was below their initial $840 million target. So let's stop right there. Why would you agree to something if you had a target already? The big issue. Exactly. The big reason as to why they were able to get it for that low is the last bastion for Ligue 1 at the time was Kylian Mbappe's media rights. Because he was at PSG for so long, they had also had Neymar. They had other stars over at PSG. But a lot of people watch Ligue 1 for some of the more burgeoning stars that come through to other teams. It's weird to say that a lot of these clubs become feeder talents for bigger squads, but that has happened due to the market. Somebody has to struggle for someone else to get stronger, you know?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's always a one-horse race too now.
Yeah, if PSG is consistently winning, the teams of Marseille, Lyon, those are the former bastions of French soccer, and they are having issues themselves, which we're going to discuss as well. So, in December of 2024, concerns emerged that DAZN reportedly failed to meet the required subscribers target of 1.5 million. Somehow they only reached 500. Now, a termination clause allowed either party to walk away if the target isn't met by December 1st, 2025. But in February 2025, DAZN withheld 50% of its scheduled 70 million euro payment, citing poor anti-piracy enforcement and a lack of promotional support from the clubs. One study suggested that about 37% were watching League illegally. Now, I'm going to stop there really quick because we know a lot of football fans, before any of the media deals happened, before the Premier League was on Peacock and NBC, before you were able to watch on USA or you could watch on ESPN, how were football fans in other countries able to watch it? A lot of people had their sites, their crazy sites where they could track through. Some people used to watch through Twitch.
30 people in a cafe watching the game.
Exactly.
How it is in a lot of European countries.
Exactly. So they're saying that a study that they had independently taken was 37% of the viewers are accessing League illegally. So if DAZN is saying that, like, we're not getting sign up because you're letting people just be able to stream all of these matches. So they have a legal right to take action to withhold money. And so right now, the French football as well as DAZN are starting to go within some crazy commercial court. So DAZN just filed a counterclaim for 573 million in damages, claiming it was misled on subscriber potential and market conditions. And the French Football League, they're trying to find different options, but they're currently first trying to recover 70 million, and then there was another 35 million, I think, just to keep that league afloat.
Yeah.
So Eric, I think in looking at this though, this is just not based off the French league, to be fair, in terms of, I think streaming for sports is a massive thing. And I know football specifically is a massive multi-billion-dollar industry. There are multiple football streams, and the fact is a lot of these viewing rights are worth billion-dollar rights. So, the Premier League, unfortunately, doesn't have an issue in that sense because so many people want to watch it that we're able to get the deals off that. Whereas Ligue 1, like you said, losing Messi, Neymar, Mbappe has obviously killed some of the viewership, and therefore, when you're looking at the rights, they're not going to be able to get what they want. But this is something, and then therefore you struggle. But we, as streamers, as consumers, us three here, and everyone listening, we are part of the problem. Where I understand it's tough and it's hard to get to watch football. But like PJ said, in Europe, you can go to bars to do that, the places that are licensed, as opposed to streaming, because what streaming does is detrimental to your club. It comes down, it's a trickle down effect to your club. So by us streaming and us not getting the revenue, we are essentially hurting our own clubs. And this is why it's vitally important that we kind of understand that streaming, as cool as it is not to pay for something, you don't go into a restaurant every day and not pay for food and think that you're a good guy. Let's be honest. Come on. So it's very similar with what we have with streaming. And the problem is there's just such an amount of individuals. Businesses do it, consumers, private individuals do it, and then you have, all this kind of thing. So really it starts with us to be like, look, how do we start to engage and just try and get us to say, put in the money into the rights so that that money does trickle down to your club. Because if you don't, like you'll end up in Ligue where you won't, the money that they're now going to split over, that 500, instead of 800, they're now going to split over 20 clubs. You're now getting 10 million less, 15 million less. That's 3 to 5 players for a smaller club or a decent club with a good scouting. So it all costs.
I think another problem with Liga is they just don't really have an international brand. Yeah. Like, you look at teams in Italy, you look at teams in England, you look at teams in Spain, you see kids in Paraguay wearing Juventus jerseys or Arsenal jerseys. How many people globally are wearing, other than maybe a Neymar jersey, are wearing a Lille jersey or a Lyon jersey or a Marseille jersey? I would even go as far to say, I lived in France for a little bit. There's probably only one club in France that has like really good fans, and it's probably Olympique Marseille. I went to a Lyon game when Lacazette was back about a decade ago. He was still there. Season opener, and they were like second in attendance, and it was 2/3 full. The atmosphere was pretty mid for a European game. PSG is actually third in Ligue 1 in attendance, and from my understanding, the fans are not as rowdy as compared to, let's say, Man U fans from back in the days. I think just global fandom, they're not really getting revenue that way either.
Yeah, PSG is really starting to fight for making sure that their brand is globally visible. But as you said, the domestic part of it, it's really hard to get a lot of these people that come to these matches to actually be a full-on fledged fan with them. I mean, I love the jersey. It's been popping up within pop culture everywhere. PSG, when it had its Jordan brand deal, it really started to do a very strong crossover all over the globe.
That's a
But
good point, but it
yeah,
faded.
yeah,
Lost their.
well, they faded because a lot of the touch points weren't really hit, and we stopped seeing like Zion Williamson, who's a Jordan brand ambassador, and he stopped wearing some of their jerseys, and it was just like some things got lost within the fray. And don't want to dive too deep onto talent deals and things like that, how to keep people on track, but you have to be able to push forward with your brand before. And as you said, PJ, having a globally recognized brand with League On, the fact that it's named McDonald's League On, does that give it
Gambling.
credit? Because before the last 2 seasons before this, it was Uber Eats League On. So
Any more than Barclays Premier League.
yeah, I mean Barclays
Barclays
was
at least sounds
Now
classy.
you got to throw shade on my company. Well, I
At
don't
least
understand.
Barclays
Like,
sounds
I
classy.
mean, look, I get it. I get what you're saying, but I mean, at the end of the day, like whoever's paying them money to put their name, that's what they're paying for, right? And like you've just highlighted why they need to do that. So I get that, and we'll also that I don't mind about the name because you're just going to call it Liga. It doesn't matter. You're always going to call it Liga. You know, us we're going to call it Liga. I know the official title is. You know, we're always going to say what it is. I think what is interesting, you said something that said like clubs like PSG, which have always been massive history. Please don't forget these. They've got history and players. Marseille, Lyon, some of these Monaco, some of these teams have got storied past, storied
yeah,
Champions League nights, famous
Lyon.
players. So they have echoes of that. Now, looking at what PSG are going to do for their own brand now, they're a team essentially devoid of superstars, right? With a talented young group of players that is now going to demonstrate that is the driving face of PSG and League 1. So what you're saying and what you're seeing now, to your point though, is you have a very strong young Parisian side coming through that is going to start to look to dominate. One, domestically, unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's just the sheer amounts of money, as you can tell. They're competing on the European scale, as you can tell. They're not,
yeah.
and therefore we know that Liga is certain levels. They're top five league, but PSG are at the top pinnacle of that, if not European football at the moment. They're a top outfit with great young players with a long future ahead of them. So maybe this is the catalyst to drive some of that flavor that's been taken away by the Mbappes and Messis and Neymars who've moved on to greener pastures. This PSG side has got a few young French players. If you've noticed, they buy young, good French players, and that's maybe what they go and how they're looking at a strategic drive for Liga. Is like Bayern Munich, like Manchester United of the youngs, where you buy young, talented French players. So they stay in France and you drive them as your figureheads, like they did with Mbappe. That is what they will keep on doing. So that's what they'll look to do, is to try to keep the young best players at PSG, as long as they're strong to compete in Champions League, but also help drive Ligue 1's image, because it's a club based in PSG, in Paris, etc., etc. Those are all things that they think about.
Well, so one thing that I always think about when I think about a league are the rivalries. And though I love the story of PSG, you have to think about some of the rivals that they have. And if one of your rivals is going to be relegated, even though it's having a good season right now, there's an issue. Olympic Lyonnais, they're provisionally being relegated to League Two next summer. Yeah, because their finances aren't in a good place. They have until the summer. Now, one big thing before Manchester United actually knocked out Lyon from the Europa League, if they had stayed within that competition to the final and won it, they would have had enough money to actually stay in Ligue 1, but they won't be able to. They have to figure out a way to financially improve everything that they have within place. This deal that is right now already an issue with all of the teams within the league, because as you said, TC, you're missing about 5 to 10 million per player, and the league is not able to actually financially provide you with anything because everything's kind of locked within the courts. These teams are going to start dropping like flies, and you're not going to have good teams being able to compete with PSG, to create these different ways to continue to uplift the league. And if you don't have these rivalries, you don't have teams getting into good spaces to actually give a little bit of love and get a little bit of support, it's going to be very hard to continue to lift that brand up.
1,000%. Rivalries get people, attract new fans, and there's no one who can compete with PSG. There's no one I can see rivaling them anytime soon unless some like Saudi owner comes and takes over Lille or something.
For sure.
Well, I think that's it. I think what you're looking at is like this, as you start to get some of these clubs going in administration, you start to look at different ownership structures that are coming through. Whether it's like conglomerate groups like Ineos or it's individuals like Conte owns a team. Again, Fabregas owns a team. You know what I mean? Like everyone is trying to look at that. And to be fair, French teams were very, like I said, a big history. Big clubs, decent brands, often one city teams. So great things to look as investments for other people. Like you said, Saudis to anyone. So we might see an influx of actual spending into clubs because then they want to get into ownerships as they go into administration and then see a certain resurgence in that sense, looking at a revamp. There's a lot of things that are being discussed, but I think, it is when you get to a tough place like this, you start to look at what are the next steps and how do you get from here to back up there. And that's one of the things you start looking at, like investment, wage structures, those kind of things. And then looking at how you can, as a league, become more as a visible league. You know what I mean? Like Eric said, you want to become like his beard, often stubble.
Very eloquently said there, TC. But that is the next point. The final point is, where can you really go from here? Like, one of the best parts of this is France is a huge market. They have huge potential, but it's not going to be a very clean resolution. Right now, you still have 4 more years of this deal, and you already have the issue right now. So how are we going to keep moving forward with that? On DAZN and BN side, subscriber growth is probably going to just stay flat. Very limited monetization because I don't feel as though advertising or third-party distribution is looking strong, and the current model is just looking rough. As TC was also stating, like, people are watching their sports or watching their other things in different ways and not always through just streaming, through legal sites. It's just what it is right now. If DAZN is saying 37%, I'm probably going to say that number is probably closer to 45. So
easy.
Yeah, and that is a very conservative number. So what is a way? I mean, it's football. Can French football adopt a model similar to the MLS? Because now they actually have a chance. I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't feel as though anyone wants to take their American way of doing things, having collective bargaining like that. But we'll see what happens. PJ, what do you have? What do you think is a good route that Ligue 1 can kind of dig themselves out of?
Yeah, I mean, they need more. Like you're saying with the streaming, they're not getting the TV revenues, and like I think they need to find a way to boost their fandom because they're not getting like all the teams in Ligue 1. Their fans are only located in that geographic region outside of PSG. Yeah. So like there's just not a lot of global appeal. So they need to find a way to appeal to the global market because how much money is Real Madrid making from selling jerseys internationally and people watching? I mean, the freaking Saudi League, I turn on the TV and the Saudi League is on. I see Benzema and Ronaldo playing. I mean, a Lille versus Marseille match is going to be more competitive, but that's not going to be on TV. So they need to find a way to become more of a global brand for sure.
I don't know what, I think also the problem here that I find in America is that sports subscriptions are just capitalized in such a befucked way. It'd be nice if you could house, a sporting collection. Because I feel like, I get a bunch of football channels. So I get Saudi, Liga, and some other one, some random one. And those are what I get, those kind of things. And then I've obviously got to get the different subscriptions to get Premier League, FA Cup, and ESPN for Karibo. So essentially 3 different subscriptions to watch what 3 competitions my team's in, So I can get it. But that's here. Whereas in some other places, it's, so there's something we can do. That's a bigger problem for anything else. But that's we're trying to solve world economics here.
To wrap it up before TC gets too far off, one thing I just really want to see with the French league is have a little bit of backbone and have a little bit of fun with it. Like, you are now at the bottom of figuring out everything monetarily for all of the clubs that are kind of trusting you to do these things. Your clubs are starting to go into debt and they're not finding good sponsors to right now. Just start finding from how the different leagues are right now positioning themselves, the stories that they're telling to really strengthen their brand. There's a very strong product within it and it just needs to be extracted. And I'm really wishing them luck because because I just want to continue to see the sport moving forward. So, listeners,
I want to end on, we can save this question for next time, but if we think Ligue 1 is still a top 5 league, maybe that'd be a good discussion for next week. I'll let you guys think about that one.
yeah, that is really good. Yeah, listeners, would love to hear from you guys on that. Yeah, we went pretty deep into that topic. Wanted to give a little bit more room for the very end because I am currently wearing my Brooklyn Football Club merch that I went to that match on this past weekend. It was a really good time down in Coney Island. Brooklyn FC was able to tie with Lexington Sporting Club on Saturday, 1-1. It was a really fun match down there. I had a really good time. I'm actually going to show some
Can you explain to us
videos.
what the experience was like?
Yeah, I'm going to do a nice little content view of what the game was like for me actually going down there. It was a really fun time at Maimonides Park down in Coney Island. Like when you're watching the game, but then you seeing everybody also have a roller coasters going on and just people yelling and screaming and trying to figure things out. It's really cool to watch like some of the fans, especially like the younger fans, actively get into the cheers. It reminded me of some of my time back when I was going to Rapids matches. Whenever they played like any of the U.S. Open Cup matches, it was a little bit smaller, more of an intimate crowd that understood exactly what they were trying to watch. So that was really cool to see. Just a little bit for the actual game. So in the 41st minute, Lexington scored off of a set piece, but then in the 61st minute, we had Gravias scored the second half equalizer. It was a really cool back and forth. It's just a very determined match, and I really enjoyed it. I'll go back again. Definitely going to give him some love. But also to wrap it all up, there all of the matches for USL Women 2 are streamed on Peacock. So you can start getting some of these deals pushed through. So you can watch the matches on Peacock. You can also go to the match and actually go over to watch the matches to support. There is a match happening this Saturday, April 26th. It'll be Brooklyn FC versus DC Power. That would be really fun to watch. But yeah, that's really what I have to wrap us up here. Gents, do you have anything else? But listeners, viewers, thanks again for giving Dem Boys Watch Footy some time today. PJ, TC, it's your boy E. Thank you all again.